Algebra 1, in Lesson 9, we are going to be solving quadratic equations by using factored form. This is very similar to when you found zeros using the factors. And congratulations, this is your last video of the year. So I'm glad that you guys made it this far. I'm proud of you, and let's get started. We are skipping ahead to activity 2 here. Let's solve some equations. You'll see what Tyler did in these steps. Look through Tyler's steps and write down what he did in each step, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, looking at what Tyler did in each step. Step 1 is a really important step when we're solving quadratics. He added 99 to both sides to make the equation equal to 0. To solve a quadratic equation using the factored form, you have to have it equal to 0. So that's something that's really important. Step 2, he factored the left side. That's what we worked on in the previous video. And then he used the zero product property. He knew that if this first part equaled 0, or if the second term equals 0, that the whole thing would equal 0. And that's what you've done before when you found zeros for the quadratics. And then he solved for n. And what that means is that if n equals 11, this equation is true. Or if n equals -9, this equation is true. In number 2, we're going to work through solving each of these. We'll do them one at a time. This first one I wrote down, it's already equal to 0, so I can go right into the factoring step. And I'm using what we did in the last lesson, and I can write it as x plus 3 times x plus 5. And so I know if x equals -3, because that'll make this first term equal to 0, or if x equals -5, then the second term would be equal to 0. And so my solutions are x equals -3 and -5. And that's how you can write it, because we want to know what can x equal to make our initial equation true. In B, I noticed that the equation is not equal to 0. So first thing I'm going to do is subtract 5 from both sides so that my equation is equal to 0. And then I'm going to set up my parentheses to factor. I know I need to multiply to get 7, so that'd be 1 and 7. I need to add to get -8, so that would be -7 and -1. And so I see my solutions are x equals 7 and 1. Try C on your own and start again when you're ready. Okay, in C it was already equal to 0. Here's the factored form. And so if I solve this, I would have x equals 11 and -1. D looks a little bit different because your x squared term comes second, but we have seen some like this before. If I set this up to factor, I would have 7 and 7, and then I'm going to have a plus x and a minus x. And I'm going to think about this in a slightly different way. I'm going to write down 7 plus x equals 0, and so I'm going to know that x needs to equal -7 for that part. And then I'm going to write this one down, and I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. I get -x equals -7. There's the one thing that some people might miss, is that -x. Divide both sides by -1. I get x to be 7. So my solutions are x equals -7 and x equals 7. In E, the first thing we need to do is simplify all of this so that we end up with a quadratic that we can recognize. So first, simplify everything, use your distributive property, combine like terms, and start again when you're ready. Okay, once I've multiplied everything out and combined like terms, I have this. This is something I'm more used to. And now we can solve by factoring. Okay, when I factor everything out, I would get x plus 10 times x minus 1. So my solutions would be x equals -10 and a +1. Now you might be thinking, what happens if I can't factor it, right? How am I going to solve the quadratic if I can't factor it? Like we saw in the previous video, there was one that we could not factor. It was impossible. There are other ways to solve quadratics that you will get into in Algebra 2, but for right now, we are just practicing solving by factoring.